And then eventually at the altar, you put a ring on and close. And by the way, at the altar, you're not sort of saying, hey, do you still like me? What questions have you got?
Matt, sorry, I'm curious. How did you close her?
Stop it. That's another question. I said, tomorrow I'll give you 60 grand more than you paid for it. I said, it's not for sale. I said, however, I am interested in possible rental discussions. He said, we're not interested. I said, brilliant. So when do you think you will be?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Property Lunch with Giuseppe. Now, today I have a special guest that is not completely property related, but is business related. It could be applied as well in property. Matt Elwell. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Very well, mate. Lovely to see you again. And you've got wine on the go and I haven't.
Yes, I have one. I thought you got the note, but apparently you have water. Anyway,
I've got too much to do. I'll have wine later.
Right. So Matt has been in the property business, but in the business in general for a few years now. He's been training a lot of people on not only selling but mostly closing. Now there is a huge difference, which Matt is going to explain in a second, between selling and closing. And also, why is that important in business and in any kind of business you're going to run right now or in the future? So, Matt, can I ask you briefly, what's the difference between selling and closing? Because there is a lot of confusion around these two terms.
Well, firstly, thanks for having me and welcome to everybody on the channel. Property investing, what an amazing time to be a professional property investor right here, right now. So many opportunities. And look, I think firstly, selling, closing, negotiating for a professional property investor is a critical skill. And it's a skill, well, I always say, how many property investors are there around the world right now? It's millions. How many are doing it as a bit of a part-time thing? Millions. How many are actually like a professional property investor that regularly increase their skills, have training on language, negotiation, communication, sales, closing? All of this information is out there. And I think the first thing that you've got to understand to answer your question directly is that, you know, basically everything that happens before you put a written proposal, a solution of how your service, of how the deal that you've constructed is going to get both parties a result, everything that happens prior to that, Giuseppe, is selling. And I just want to say this out loud. And if you're watching to this interview, get a pen and paper, because there's a few things that I want to share with you right now that are completely the opposite to what anybody else teaches. And look, I at my very first go of property investing, long time ago, very first go, I made a cold call, having bought a piece of land. And it took me 7 years to go from cold to sold to do a multi-seven-figure deal in commercial property. And what I learned very, very quickly is that there was so much work to do prior to actually exchanging contracts. And that's what selling is, Giuseppe. That's what negotiation is. And I think it's a distinction you've got to make. So write this down. Great sales, great negotiation is about a commitment to understanding the other party so that both parties can attach to a vision of the end. I created a philosophy called open with a close. Start with the close in mind. So, hey, look, imagine that we bought a piece of land together. Imagine that we'd done a deal together. Imagine that we'd rented it out over 20 years. Like, what does amazing look like for you? How would we need to get to that point? What things do we need to discuss prior to us signing a contract? And that's why I created the philosophy, because when human beings are attached to the result that property brings at the end, that's when you can work backwards from there and then find out all the little things that have to happen to make it happen at the end and exchange contracts. So that's selling in a nutshell. And you see, my experience is, if you can work on a couple of things, if you can work on conversations about property being a collaboration by qualifying that at the very beginning, they either want or need to invest with you or to invest like using a service that you might provide. As long as they're qualified for that, the moment they're qualified and you collaborate, start with the end in mind and work backwards and look to get rid of. Great selling is asking, great selling is understanding, great selling is sharing information, great selling is looking at obstacles before they happen, so that the close and the exchange is easy. So to summarize, selling and negotiating is hard work in brackets when you follow a system. Closing is easy.
Here we go. This happens a lot, for example, in property, not only when you're looking for joint ventures, you know, looking for capital investment into your business, but also, for example, if you take some of the strategy, rent to rent, for example, when they need to negotiate with a landlord on a property, they can lease and then they can rent it out for a higher cash flow strategy. There is a lot of mindset blocks in people that want to get started, they want to get rent to rent into their bag, and they don't know how to close. You know, probably they're super good at selling themselves, super good at like saying a lot of things, but then they're lacking that little bit. It's amazing how many people miss that last step, which is just the exchange of these transactions, so the exchange of money, as you said. And you mentioned open with a close, and I have with me your book. I don't know.
Oh, thank you.
This is
I've got one. I keep it.
This is an amazing book. I remember you outlined in here your 12 steps for opening with a close. Now, if you have no idea about this difference between the two things, it's really important you get educated. And your book is so simple, but probably also because I came to one of your events and I've seen firsthand how you apply these things as well.
Yeah. Well, let me just pick up on something. Like that, I've sort of got 5 things that I think investors can work on right now that I'm happy to share with you on this interview. And your question actually picks up on something that I think all investors have got to do right now. The first thing you've got to do, write this down if you're listening, because it's about this. It's about your own mindset. Remember, the most powerful tool that you've got in business, in your property investing company, is you. Like, you're the number one thing that's got to be right. Your energy's got to be right. You've got to be clear. I drove past a piece of land that I bought for 4 years in the wrong mindset. And I used to drive past thinking, I will never be able to afford to buy that land and build a 6,000 square foot, 2-story commercial property on it and rent it out to somebody else who pays for the mortgage. Like, that was my shitty little mind pattern. That was what I used to think. And I was wrong. The second thing, by the way, is your computer phone. This is a phone with a computer. It's a computer with a phone on it. You can voice note, you can email, you can negotiate and do contract negotiation while you're on. Never ever use email to sell or close. Verbalize it and then summarize it in an email and close what happens next. It's always really important. But look, the number one thing you've got to do right now, whether you're starting out like I did all them years ago with the commercial property that I did, or whether you're even up and running as an investor, number one thing, write it down, is you must declutter your own mind first of all the negativity, of all the generalized statements that people make about the property world's going to crash and it's not a good time to buy and don't do this and don't do that. So there's 3 things you've got to do in this first step. So question number 1, what assumptions are you waking up with in the morning that are not helpful as an investor? Write that down. Question number 2, what presumptions, remember a presumption is something that cannot be proven, that isn't actually factually correct, that hinders you. So the second question is, what presumptions might you be making that are not helping you to invest? Or at least are not helping you to see investment opportunities either now or in the future? And then thirdly, which opinions of other people, including the news, including newspapers who are biased, like which opinions of other people should I totally disregard? Because I'm telling you, Giuseppe, had I listened as a 25-year-old man to the opinions of others, I could hardly find, my dad included, I could hardly find a human being around me that said, hey, go for it, invest in that terrible piece of land. They didn't have a vision. Yeah. They were scared. They couldn't see it for themselves. And so what they do is they push their fear onto you. They push their bias onto you. And look, I'm so glad that I ignored opinions of others, because if I'd listened to them, I'm not sat here. I'm just about to enter into a new negotiation. We're 10 years into a 20-year deal. We're just opening the next set of negotiations for another 25-year contract. So
that's a FRI lease where you don't have to do anything at all, right?
You don't have to do anything. I don't. They pay for everything. They pay us quarterly in advance. Like it enabled me to semi-retire and leave my old company and do this. Look, I teach selling, negotiating, communicating for a living. It's something I love doing. And that one deal enabled me to sit here. I've got 22 staff now in a new training company here in the middle of England. And but this is my passion. This is like something I absolutely love doing. So number one, you must declutter. And if you ever use the words, people aren't buying at the moment, it's rubbish.
Yeah.
It's not true. There are buyers everywhere. There are people snapping up deals left, right, and centre. I'm entering into a new negotiation right now. So use those three things. Secondly, Giuseppe, and I'm not a property trainer. So what I'm about to say may be like the exact opposite of what others are saying in the property world. And that's okay. It's just my view, which is, you've asked me to come on, so I'll give it you. I honestly believe the biggest downside or the thing that gets in the way the most of property investing, particularly here in the UK, you know, there's property investor training and there's all kinds of people everywhere. I mean, by the way, if anybody's listening to you, they should do, because you're authentic. You practice what you preach. You're a genuine guy, and that's important. You've got good information. So if you are listening to people out there, be careful who you're listening to. And in Giuseppe, you've picked an absolute diamond. But look, the critical point here is what happens is too many people have got too many strategies. Like, go all in right now on one strategy. Go all in on rent to rent. Go all in on commercial. Go all in on whatever it is you want to go. And make sure it's something that you know you're good at. You don't have to be passionate about it. What you have to be is good at it. Being an investor, you should be good at it. Investing involves cash. It involves finance. It involves opportunity. It solves problems for people. It enables people to retire early. It enables people to invest in their families more. It enables you to hit dreams and goals. This is a serious game. This is a serious game, and it's a dangerous road if you want to be a master of all, master of none. So get serious about it. I'll be honest with you. I had a few flips. I had a few rents. I had a rent in Spain. I've just sued a firm in Spain, got all my money back from like 10 years ago. Nightmare. I had property in Cyprus. Nightmare. I had property all over Birmingham. Nightmare. Like, in the end, I've gone all in on commercial.
Yeah.
I've siphoned everything else off. My brother's got one or two. I've siphoned everything else off. My brother and I own a property company together, and we've got an opportunity to invest right now. We're looking at commercial because that's what we know. That's what we do. That's the second piece of advice I'd give everybody. Number one, get clear in your own mind. Number two, go all in on one strategy and focus on it.
Thank you, Matt, for that. Can I just say as well that it's important to highlight that not everything is perfect. As you said, you know, you had a nightmares experience with some properties abroad or whatever. And we never preach, you know, that everything is perfect, everything is good. You know, you have challenges, but you can learn how to overcome the challenges. But also how you can learn from these challenges to not make the same mistake later on. Now, that doesn't mean giving up. because if you give up, then you are left just with the bad experience. But
I'll share this. I've never shared it before. When I was first investing, there was no such thing as property education. There was no such thing as property training. Like, there just wasn't out there. It wasn't there. That's as simple as that. This is why you've got to be really careful, but open to finding the right person to help you, right? And I made one mistake, and that was to employ a building contractor who, quite frankly, was unprofessional, had made up a lot of stuff, and it cost me £164,000 to get rid of this contractor, to hire somebody else, which was difficult because nobody else wanted to do it. And that was about 25%, 20% of the total investment, right? That was a big chunk. And having to finance that mistake was really, really tough, really tough. And because we were focused, because we didn't have loads of other things going on, we were able to get it done and get it over the line. And now, by the way, looking back, 160,000 quid, of course, it's a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of things now, it's like, oh, cool, it's okay. Yeah. But I tell you what, with the right training, right education, I would not have made that mistake. And I can tell you, although I've learned massively from it, in a negotiation, when you ask the other party to take a few moments to consider what might go wrong, and if it went wrong, what we'd do about it, it's so good for the collaboration, it's so good for trust, and it's so good for the relationship. You're totally in service of them. Hey, look, of course, we're going to try and make everything go perfect. If something did go wrong, what are the key things we'd need to look out for? What possible obstacles should we think about now, so that if they do come up, we can get around them together? What risks or implications could we consider? Let's talk about that now, before we get to the contract stage, before we submit a proposal for you to consider. The worst case scenario, Giuseppe, is to get to an expectation, or a point where your expectation is to exchange contracts, and for them to start spewing up reasons why I shouldn't. So great closing involves both parties having professionally gone through a process of elimination of things that we should consider just in case they come up. Great closing is where both parties are committed, and both parties are looking for all the reasons why they should. They're looking for all the improvements. They're looking for all the opportunities that come their way. They're no longer looking for risk, implication, or obstacle. Look, it's the same as getting married. I got married to my wife, Kerry. It's an old-fashioned saying, but we courted for 3 years before we got married. And during that 3 years, we were selling ourselves to each other. We were negotiating with each other. And then eventually, at the altar, you put a ring on and close. And by the way, at the altar, you're not sort of saying, hey, do you still like me? What questions have you got?
That's dangerous.
Yeah, because it's too late then. You should have committed by then.
Matt, sorry, I'm curious. How did you close her?
Stop it. That's another question.
Just so you know, I courted my wife for 1.5 years, and then she said no all the time, and then she closed me.
You probably weren't asking the better. You should ask better questions next time. Don't bring no into play. Number 3 is to have one clear outcome, like a desired result, whenever you're in a negotiation or contract with somebody. What does that mean? It means, before COVID, I go to the property investing networks. I speak on some of the property circuits in public and share, my framework of how to sell and close and negotiate. And I hear it and I see it all the time. You'll get chatting to a property investor at a networking event, and they just talk for hours, and there's no obvious reason, there's no end in mind, there's no logical next step, and the conversation is a burner. It's painful,
sterile,
sterile. And the bottom line is, when you're speaking to another investor, when you're speaking to a possible joint venture, when you're speaking to a possible angel investor, when you're speaking to anybody in business, they have got one question in their mind, and one question only: what's in it for me? And if you or your team or your staff do not join the conversation that they're having in their head really quickly, you just become another unprofessional, possible speak in a few months. And it normally ends with, we must touch base in the new year, or give us a business card, and nothing ever happens. Mm-hmm. That's rubbish. You must be in control of the process, but your client, your prospect, must be in choice at all times. Write this down. When your prospect is in choice, you're in control. What does that mean? It means, hey, I've enjoyed talking. Let me ask you a question. If you and I could create a commercial contract that made us millions of pounds, like right here, right now, what questions have you got for me? Let's find out whether it can happen. I don't know. I made that up. But like, ask them a question that's obvious with an outcome. It's called an outcome question. When you did my training, it's actually in the Elite Closing Academy formula. Questions that are linked to an outcome. So don't ask neutral questions that lead to like long answers with no context. Ask questions that have a tangible result in them. Ask questions that really capture the person you've asked the question. It captures their attention, and lace it with reasons why they would answer it. Hey, I'm amazing at commercial property, you might say. What questions have you got about how we could possibly work together? If it feels direct, good. It should be. It should be direct. Like, we're all busy. We've all got families. We've all got commitments. We've all got responsibilities. And like, people haven't got time to have open-ended discussions that lead to nowhere. Start with the end in mind. And if they're interested, work backwards. It works perfect. So that's number 3. Have a tangible result, have an outcome.
That's great. Why do you think, Matt, that for many people it's hard to make the close at the end? You know, it's so easy to sell themselves.
Simple. They haven't done enough work in the negotiation on sale. Simple. Like, the last thing that you want, Giuseppe, when you're expecting to exchange a contract is, do you know what, I'd love to, but I need to see the terms and conditions again. I'd love to, but send me the heads of terms. I haven't read them properly. I'd love to, but my solicitor, they're excuses at that stage. Like, if you're hearing that when your expectation is to close something, you do not have a system. You do not have a process. When you learn what I teach, that goes away. Like, closing becomes easy and effortless because you've followed a whole process. So when you learn my system, number one thing you get rid of is shitty little excuses, such as, I need to see it on an email again. Like, nobody needs to see a commercial property deal on an email in the close if you've done the job properly. They should have already attached to the result they're going to get at the end. In the close. Does that make sense? The other thing it removes is that frustration, and it is frustration, of having lots of great conversations, serving lots of people, turning up on site, meeting after meeting, email after email, and then you get to the close and there was something that they're not sure about and they stall or put you off.
Do you think it's as well, apart from not doing the homework and not following the system to get to a closing point, do you think it's also because they are not confident they can actually close the deal?
Because the 3 I've given you already. Number 1, they've got hindering thoughts in their own mind about themselves or a lack of process. Number 2, they haven't gone all in on one area of expertise. They don't know it inside out. So they feel a bit of a fraud, or when somebody asks them a question, they don't feel like they've quite learned it yet. That's never going to work. And number 3, they're not attached to a tangible result. And at some point, if you don't have those 3 things, it will decrease closing contracts. I've got 2 more things of the 5 I want to share for anybody listening to this right now. Number 4 out of the 5, and we've touched on this, is human-to-human interaction questions. Like, what if you were to rate the quality of your questions when you're looking to serve, sell, close, negotiate contracts, like what number would you give yourself? Like 10 is amazing. You're always asking really powerful questions that, when answered, enable both parties to move towards exchanging. And 0 is you constantly just talk dribble. You've got no process. You've got no system. And you ask questions that bring yes and no into play. Your readers and your listeners should make a note of the number. And, you know, you must arm yourself. And I'm going to give you 6 words in a second. Like, you must make sure that when you're selling and negotiating, you ask powerful questions that, when answered, create a logical and an emotional response in the buyer, so that they can come to their own conclusion of their own accord, without being persuaded, without you being pushy, without you doing all the explaining. And write this down: if you're explaining, you're losing. Your buyer should be able to explain to you exactly what they're going to get with your service. They should be able to explain to you exactly what results they're going to get at the end. They should be able to explain to you their reasons why they're investing with you. Like, it shouldn't be the other way around. And so many people get this wrong. Most unprofessional investors make the sales process easy, and then the closing contracts becomes hard. If you ask questions that start with these 6 words during the sales and negotiation process, you'll be fine. Here they are. Write them down if you're listening. What, when, how, who, which, and where. I call them 5 W's and 1 H. You should always look out for the H. It's quite neutral. What, when, how, who, which, and where. And when you ask questions like, hey, what is it about my service that you like? Like, what would make you invest with me? Other than money, what are the 5 things you like about my style? Which one of my company values do you connect with the most? Like, these are questions that you should be asking during the sales process. What, when, how, who, which, and where. And point number 5 is, if you're an investor, get your computer phone out. Scroll through who already knows you. Scroll through who you've already had powerful discussions with previously. Scroll through who you know right now who might possibly be interested in investing with you, and move towards them. When you learn this, you remove the need to constantly feel like you've got to create new leads or new opportunities, and you will totally and utterly get rid of burning leads and opportunities. Remember, a burnt lead is a broken human. You know, if they've moved towards your product or service, they want to invest with you, but you didn't get back to them. They went cold on you. Actually, the truth is, you've gone cold on them, and now it's your turn for you to get back to them. And that's the 5th thing I think you should be doing right now.
When you walk down the street and you see these people giving leaflets or trying to sell you something, many people, when they see people in the street, they try to avoid. You know, I always say, if you can't be sold, you cannot sell. You know. Well,
I agree with that, and I think there's another thing to think here is the way you buy is the way you sell. So if you're and by the way, like I have a science on this called the ancient part of the brain. And I learned it from my dad. When I bought that first piece of land with my brother, on the one hand, I had my dad saying, no, it's going to go wrong. I'm convinced it's going to be the worst thing we ever did. Mm-hmm. Like, why would we do this? We're doing okay. Like, that was lots of fear. On the other hand, I had my brother going, yeah, let's do it. Forget fear. There is no problem. And what I actually worked out, Giuseppe, is that when you invest in land or property, or in anything actually, the future isn't real. So we don't know whether we're going to be alive tomorrow or the day after or in a year or 10 years. We don't know what's going to happen next. That's a fact. So if you allow too much fear into your thinking, you'll never do anything, right? That's the first thing. But at the same time, if you're completely unprofessional and totally blasé, and just say yes to everything, it's going to be a problem. So I don't believe this is balance. I don't think balance is a great word. I believe this is judgment and decision. And I think you have to judge and decide, both logically and emotionally, whether or not you genuinely believe that what you do now is going to create a better future.
Yeah.
And at some point, when you realize that taking that step and making that decision is the safe play, having considered possible fears and possible problems, and also considered the possibilities and the good things, when you take all of those things into account and make informed decisions about investing, that's when you realize you're in power. And you know, anybody listening to this, I promise you, if you're not careful, you'll come up with all the reasons why you shouldn't buy a piece of land, all the reasons why you shouldn't invest. And you should definitely consider those reasons, as long as you also put the same amount of energy and effort and visualization into all the reasons why you should and all the things that could go right. Because remember, wherever there's, I think it's going to go wrong, there's, well, actually, it can also go right.
Yeah.
And best investors, they're the ones that make those kind of decisions.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we tend to think always, what if it goes wrong? What if it goes wrong? But we never think, what if it goes right?
Yeah, exactly.
What is your plan for the next 6 months or 12 months? What is your vision?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've got 3 big things going on in my life. Number one is at home, the family. We've just bought a beautiful new home, and we're actually, as we speak, putting together plans to extend. And my 2 little girls, as we come out of coronavirus, they're all really excited. So that's like my number one priority, actually. It's very difficult, though, not to focus on 2 of the big things. Number one, the Elite Closing Academy. My business partner, Nick James, and me are 3 years into this project. We're now teaching and training on a global stage. We have clients in America, all over Europe, all over the UK, and have like an amazing training centre right next to Birmingham International Airport, where we teach some of the things that we've talked about today. So that's really, really exciting. Really, like, loads going on there. And then the last thing is this new negotiation that I've entered into with my commercial property. And that's going to set the tone, really, the next 10 months. We've just agreed the schedule of the discussions, and my brother and I have just started to formulate our big vision and what we're trying to achieve. So those are the top 3 things that are on my agenda right here, right now. And there is a 4th, actually, and that's to do with nature. In the background, I'm an ambassador for hedgehogs in the city of Birmingham, and very keen, keep a keen eye on the hedgehog population.
Oh, nice. I like it. Right, Matt, thank you very much for this interview. Before I leave you, I want to ask you if we can give this book that helped me a lot, and also other people, if you can offer this book for free to the community.
We've got a link that you can put in. So comment somewhere. All they have to do is just cover the post and packaging.
Yeah.
What you also get when you purchase the book, what you'll also get is, I've done some videos, 19 videos. There's lots of information. It's so that you can integrate. If you want to learn how to negotiate and sell and become amazing at property investing, the framework of what we teach, what we've covered, and loads more is in that book. So if they click the link, it's just to cover the free post and packaging.
Yeah, so what I'll do, I'll just put a link below, and you can just click there, and it's about £2 something for the postage and packaging, and you will get.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In the UK, it's just under £3.
Yes, in the UK, yeah. And then you get this amazing hard copy of the book, which is really, really good if you want to get into negotiation into your property deals. Okay, Matt, thank you so much. It was a great interview, great value for all our community, and I hope to see you soon then.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. Thank you. And
cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.